When Australian businesses think about going global, the conversation often starts with which country do I expand into and which channel do I use to get there? Direct to customer, retail or marketplaces. What we are increasingly seeing is that success isn't about choosing one. It's about building a strong digital foundation, it's about developing brand awareness, and it's about layering channels strategically over time. It's also about knowing when to pivot. So today, we're going to focus less on theory and more about what actually works in practice when scaling internationally. Today, I'm joined by two e-commerce leaders who have been paving the way for their brands internationally. First, I have Clementine Boshevski, founder and CEO of Salt Lab, a wellness brand focused on high-grade magnesium products. Salt Lab has successfully expanded internationally through the direct-to-consumer channel. I also have Alison Trang, e-commerce manager at LEO LIN, a women's ready-to-wear fashion label based out of Sydney. LEO LIN has broken into markets internationally, including the US, with pop-up sites in New York in partnership with Bloomingdale. Two incredible careers, and it's no wonder they're not one, but two featured in this year's Top 50 People in E-commerce, presented by Australia Post and Inside Retail. Now, throughout the panel, we're going to explore different approaches businesses consider when they're scaling internationally, and we'll see that it's not a one-size-fits-all model. Clementine, let's start with you. Can you describe your international growth journey at Salt Lab?
Yeah, absolutely. So Salt Lab expanded internationally in the exact same manner that we were already doing very successfully in Australia. So we were predominantly direct to consumer, 95%, and we got to a point where we wanted to just test the waters. So we actually just created a global Facebook campaign, and we wanted the algorithm to show us where the traction was. The US naturally picked up very quickly, and within 30 days, doing it that way allowed us to really lean in. We were able to test the product to market fit and scale really rapidly.
So you went down the path of direct to customer, replicating what you did in Australia. What do you think that channel unlocked for you internationally that others potentially wouldn't or didn't?
Yeah, for us, direct-to-consumer was what we knew. We had the infrastructure set up for that. We had the warehouse was set up. They could just add a US or an international label. So we were able to open up our total addressable market really seamlessly without the challenges that going into retail faced. I think direct-to-consumer and advertising on Facebook opened up retail organically for us because people were seeing our marketing. So we were able to open up a market that we hadn't tapped into, expand our database and customer market really seamlessly.
Now, Salt Lab is what you'd probably call a small business with a relatively small team. Is there anything you can share about the biggest complexities or challenges that you've had to face when expanding globally? And for those small, medium businesses listening today, any advice you can give them when thinking about growing internationally?
Yeah, I think naturally the fears around how do I do this? How do I know it's going to work? You know, as a small business, when we expanded, we had a marketing team of 2 and a warehouse of 3. For us, it was more about doing what we were already doing with the team that we had. And then we brought on external temporary staff for the warehouse to meet the demand there. We were able to then test the product to market fit before we overinvested. We didn't need to sit on an investment of stock on the water. We didn't need to bring on a big marketing team. We were able to really duplicate what we had done well in Australia to test the market through Meta, and then just bring in temporary staff to fill the demand of the orders.
And grow gradually over time.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, what's really clear is that the direct-to-consumer or direct-to-customer model gives you control, but it also requires that you build demand almost market by market. Alison, I might actually start with the same question that I asked Clementine. Can you share with us the growth journey of LEO LIN?
Yeah, so we're kind of the opposite of what Clementine had. We started wholesale first. So we launched international wholesale around November 2022. And our first collection was with Moda Operandi and Neiman Marcus, who are still really great partners with us to this day. And what we noticed really early on were our retailers weren't just buying into the product, they were buying into the brand, which sounds a bit cliche, but I think it was really clear last year. We did an activation with Bloomingdale's. We took over 5 of their windows in their New York City storefronts, and we did an activation inside for our spring-summer collection. And we do exclusives with other retailers as well. And we could see the pace at which wholesale was growing at, and we knew that e-com was just around the corner. And Sure enough, it was. Last year in January, we really saw US e-com take off. And that was due to, I mean, we had a lot of strategic implementations that we did beforehand, but we had a really strong collection. We'd also launched into some of our key accounts. And yeah, we saw that take off. And then, like many other businesses, we had the tariffs in March and April, and we had to pivot our strategy really quickly to maintain that momentum. But we're really fortunate that those strategies have paid off. And now we flipped in the last 12 months from being an Australian-led business to an international-led business.
I'm sure those tariffs gave quite a few businesses challenges over the past 12 months.
Yeah.
Now, you're the e-commerce manager at LEO LIN. What role did e-commerce and digital strategy play in driving your growth internationally?
Yeah, so in terms of our strategy last year, I mean, the tariffs really expedited a lot of what we had planned for international growth. We were very fortunate that the year prior we'd already engaged with our key stakeholders in anticipation of what the tariffs might bring. And so we had discussions with our ERP partners, our web dev agency. We'd engage with the warehouse that our wholesale accounts were in to see if they could take us on from an e-com capacity. And yeah, we just got all our ducks in a row to understand from a project perspective what that would look like. And for us from e-com, we implemented a staged approach. We did a complete website restructure where we isolated the US on its own so that we could really direct implementations where those strategies would affect only the US and no other market. We had a US warehouse migration, and we flipped our site during the stock transit to a pre-order model so that we could maintain momentum. And we've also been able to drive improved customer experience because we can now offer next day delivery, we can offer exchanges, which we hadn't previously. And then we wrapped that up with a full website retheme where we wanted to improve the user experience, we wanted to improve the site performance and continue to drive international growth.
Well, sounds like you've done a lot over the past 12 weeks, but an enormous amount achieved. Of those digital strategies and channels that you have delivered, are there any that stand out specifically as being the ones that produce the best results for you globally?
Yeah, I mean, the website restructure definitely, that really allowed us to isolate the US and implement specific strategies. We could really see what was performing well and what wasn't performing well in the US. And for us, learning more about the buying behaviour as our market was growing was really key in those strategies. And yeah, we've been able to really target that.
One challenge many businesses face is trying to decide when is the right time to scale, but also when's the wrong time to scale. Are there any particular signals or metrics that you look out for that help to tell you whether the market is worth further investment? And then on the flip side, what do you look out for to tell you that it's not the right time?
Yeah, I mean, obviously from a commercials perspective, understanding what is driving revenue, what is driving traffic, and like Clementine, testing those markets as well from a paid perspective, seeing what channel, in terms of your channel attribution, what are the channels that are driving traffic and what's driving conversion, and can you put some paid behind that to start testing and look at your ROAS, look at your cost of sales, look at your new customer acquisition costs and see if you can maintain efficiency like that. I think also on the flip side, looking from a logistics lens as well, how much is it costing you to get your product into that market? What are the costs of duties for us? Unfortunately, we've had to turn off several markets because of the cost of duties and it just wasn't viable. But I think working in digital, you can be very agile in that sense, and hopefully those duties come down and we can start shipping to those markets again. But yeah, I think obviously looking from a commercial lens and a channel attribution, but you still have to maintain viability in that market as well.
And being willing to pivot is also something that's really important by the sounds of things.
Yeah.
Well, we might end with a rapid fire question for you both, which is what is next for you internationally? Clementine, I might start with yourself. Yeah. What are your top priorities as you think forward to the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, absolutely. So the US is our biggest opportunity market at the moment. And I think what we are realising is the US demographics shop very differently to Australia. And once you have launched, like we've now launched on TikTok Shop, in Amazon and Nordstrom, L1. So we've got the balance of direct to consumer with TikTok Shop, Amazon and all these other channels. And we're really trying to zoom out and look at how that works holistically, because the US shopper, you know, they use TikTok Shop as a search engine, then they repurchase from Amazon, and it's so you're spending money in Facebook and it's not that direct correlation that you are used to seeing. So it's a very different model. So for us, we're really trying to understand that journey and that user experience and buying behaviour, and then double down.
So understanding the market specifically that you're trying to scale into is really important.
Absolutely.
Alison, how about yourself? If you fast forward to the next 6 to 12 months, what are the top priorities for LEO LIN?
I mean, we're kind of similar in the sense that our US market in the last 12 to 18 months has grown so rapidly, and we're still learning about that buying behaviour. We're learning about what channels is really driving that for us. And I think in the next 6 to 12 months, it's really still continuing to optimise those channels, learning more about our customer behaviour, but also looking at our emerging markets as well. We've got a few on our radar and looking at how we can drive growth in those markets as well.
So big things planned for the next 6 to 12 months by the sounds of things for both Salt Lab and LEO LIN. Well, Clementine and Alison, thank you both so much for your insights today. It's clear that international growth isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. Your experiences and your learnings prove that Australian e-commerce businesses really need to consider the right digital strategy and the right channel when entering into new markets. Thank you again for joining us today.